welcome to Up Against the Wall with Mike Nichols. We are part of Purple Wall Stories. Purple Wall Stories is a platform where you can submit stories and they compete against each other and the voters decide. It's a lot of fun. You can find it at purplestories.com as well as on Facebook and on Twitter. And our first guest that I've ever done, I'm here today with Darrin Doyle. So excited. Darrin is a PhD. He teaches English at Central Michigan University, and he's got a new book of short stories coming out in March. He's got a lot of other stories under his belt already and a couple novels. So good to have you today, Darrin. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
So I've got quick 10 questions to ask you. They're about writing, and they're standard questions for all the writers we have. First question is, tell us about what you've already written, some stuff you've already got out that people might know.
Well, I've got, like you said, I've got two novels. One called Revenge of the Teacher's Pet, a love story, and one called The Girl Who Ate Kalamazoo. And I've got two story collections, one called The Dark Will End the Dark, and one called Scoundrels Among Us. I think I have that one right here. You can see this one.
Awesome. Great cover.
Thank you. Yeah, so, those are, the main ones. And then I've got The Big Baby Crime Spree is coming out in March. So a lot to choose from. And plus, online, if you just Google me, I'm sure you can find some short stories or look at my website. And there's
very much. It came late, but still early. So I got a chance to look at it. Really enjoyed it. It's a very quick read. I actually have a question about one of the stories in there later for you. Sure. The second question is, how did you become a writer? Like, how did you kind of first know that you were good at writing, that you liked it, and how did that kind of journey start for you?
Probably way back when 6th, 7th grade is when I really realized how much I enjoyed reading. I remember I had to do a presentation for a class in 7th grade, and I read the story To Build a Fire by Jack London, and I loved it. And it's just this kind of existential, depressing story about this guy who is kind of cocky and goes out into the sub-zero temperatures and basically just gets lost and dies. And so it's a pretty grim story, but it's a great story. And I was just so captivated by it. And that's what really kicked off my love of this. And I would say I wrote a lot of stuff in high school, just stories to entertain myself. Didn't think seriously about doing it till honestly, like I was in my mid-20s, and I'd been playing music for a long time, and I just wanted to go back and finish up my college degree. I had dropped out for a few years and took some creative writing classes, and they said, hey, you could go to grad school, and I was like, oh, could I? And I realized how much I enjoyed it, and it was a little easier than playing in a band where you have other people that you have to depend on all the time. And I just kind of was like, I could just do this on my own, pursue this thing that I ended up really loving.
That story you just told, I've read that Jack London story. I had to read it in high school too. And that kind of leads perfectly to my next question, which is, who are some of the writers that have inspired you and made you want to write, and maybe their style taught you lessons about your own style?
Yeah. After that Jack London, I like a lot of kids who are 12, 13, I read a lot of Stephen King, back then, and that was certainly influential. And then when I got in high school, Edgar Allan Poe, of course, and I really loved these existential writers like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre, and I just felt like really opening up this world of adult stuff that was interesting to me, and Shirley Jackson and Franz Kafka, those writers. I've always loved the absurd as well. So Kafka and darkly comedic writers like that were hugely influential to me and still are.
I love how you have a range. Like, those are all over the genres that you just listed, all those writers. That's definitely a well-versed reader.
Maybe that's why I have a hard time settling on particular styles. I get impatient. I like to play around with style and voice, things like that.
And there's so many different ideas too that you get through reading different writers, and that also kind of leads again into the next question, which was, writers have a million different ideas and inspirations, and the imaginations are all over the place. But how do you pick what to land on in terms of what you're actually going to write about?
I just throw whatever at the wall until something sticks. I have so many started, stories that I've started and they fizzled. They didn't go anywhere. Yeah, I try to just entertain myself, quite honestly, and I don't generally have a concept before I start. I might have a slight concept, like The Girl Who Ate Kalamazoo. I wrote that novel just thinking I wanted to write something where something really absurd happens, and I was like, can I make it work? Can I make it believable that somebody could eat a city? Like, how can you do that? And so it was kind of a challenge, that one, for example. Um, but beyond that, usually I just kind of start with something and see if I can get momentum on it and see if it keeps my interest,
Do you have a physical process to the writing that you have to go through? Like, do you like to, oh, I have to be writing at 6 a.m. every day while it's still early when my body is just woken up? Or like, I need total darkness. Like, I need no light, just me and the screen. Will use a typewriter. Some people are very, very pure
Yeah.
about that. Do you like to be outside? Do you have any kind of physical process to the way you write that helps you write?
Hanging upside down from a tightrope. No, I no, I used to be yeah, I used to be a total nighttime writer. It was when I had young kids, newborns. I could stay up and feed them. If they woke up, and my wife could get a little sleep, and so for like 11 to 3 every night I wrote. But then, as I got a full-time job and so on, it's harder to do that. So honestly, now summer is when I do my writing, and we have this little camper trailer, and I'll go there. There's no internet, and just a DVD player and a radio, and I can seriously spend 8 hours a day, writing by myself. And that, I get a ton of writing done that way now. So it's more sporadic now. There's longer intervals where I don't write, but when I do, it's very productive.
What is the secret to getting published? Like, so many writers write stuff, but it never is going to be in a book or on a page somewhere that's on a shelf. A lot of writers talk about how annoying the process is, and then some other writers talk about how really annoying the process is. What is your secret to kind of getting published, and how did that work for you?
It's really not, it's not a secret. Thick skin. Just having thick skin, you're going to get rejected. And the word that I think is the most valuable word for a writer is persist. Just persist. The only writers who fail are ones that stop, and that's the truth. And it's going to take longer than you think. It is. It's a painful process. It did not come easily for me. I wrote, I'd say the first 12 and a half years of my writing, I got a handful of stories published. The second 12 and a half years of my, what I consider serious writing, I will have 6 books published within this year. So yeah, thank you. So it took a while, to get there. And my first book, it was a bear. I spent a year and a half trying to find an agent, another year waiting for her to try to sell the book, and it didn't sell. And then another, year looking around for another publisher and finally getting it. So, you just have to have faith. There's a ton of, this is with novels that I still have in my drawer that I tried to sell and could not publish, so it's a numbers game in some ways, and it's a waiting game.
Yeah, I'm glad I haven't had to go through it yet. But my last question, as part of the standard or dinner party writer questions, is if you had one piece of advice for writers, one piece of advice, what is that advice?
Read a lot. Honestly, that is, other than persist, which I already said, so I don't want to repeat myself, but just persist is probably the biggest one. Just don't quit if you want to do it. But reading, just feeding your brain. You just got to be a sponge, and that will inspire you. and of course, you have to write too, and that's the other thing is allow yourself to write shitty drafts. Just allow yourself to put it down on page because I tell my students all the time, I think it's kind of like sculpting. Like a sculptor needs a block of something, some material, whatever they work with. If they don't have a block, they can't make anything. So that draft, the crappy stuff that you write down first, it becomes that block, and then you shape it, then you make it look like something, make it into something cool. So you gotta, I think, just free yourself of the idea that it's got to be good right away because it takes time. So
Yeah, I recently finished a script a couple months ago, and the first time I finished it, I was like so proud of this. This is so great. A week later, I reread it, and I just was so horrified by it. I was like, I don't deserve to live. Like, and just the permission to give yourself, a, hey, it's okay that
yeah,
the first one isn't perfect.
yeah,
It's supposed to just be a first draft. Don't be so hard on yourself.
right.
That's
It's so it's absolutely true that and that still happens to me. I write something, I think it's great, and then a little while later, I look at it, I'm like, what was I thinking? Why? It's so good. So it's really weird. You have to have this combination of egotism and belief in yourself, and then absolute kind of crushing criticism of yourself as well. So it's a strange paradox.
So those were my seven, just kind of standard writing questions. I want to ask three questions now that are just for you. That I just was like, okay, if I'm just going to get to talk to Darrin, this is kind of what I want to know. And first question is actually, we share something in common that I am a CMU alumni, Fire Up Chips, proud graduate of Central Michigan University, where you teach.
Yeah.
And you are dealing with the next generation of writers. I'm curious as to like a published writer yourself, what is the biggest challenge to then try to teach writing to the next generation coming up? So
I don't know if it's just my perception, but I feel like one hurdle is that right now we have so much visual media, television and movies and so on, that I worry that students aren't reading as much, and they and this isn't across the board, of course, but yeah, I'm generalizing a bit, but that writing a story is so different from writing a screenplay, as you know, if you've done a screenplay. And it, you know, if you're only feeding yourself with this visual media, you're not learning the tools that you need to tell a story in the medium of fiction writing, because it's so different. You have to create the visuals, you have to create the facial expressions and so on that actors bring to things. And so sometimes I struggle with that because I think that students are more just heavy on the dialogue, like making the dialogue do all the work, and it's like you have other tools at your disposal. So that is one thing that I keep trying to stress to them. But having said that, I've been really impressed with the work my students do consistently. Very, very impressed.
so my second question was, we're both kind of Grand Rapids boys. You chose to write about Kalamazoo. Of all the cities in all of Michigan, why was Kalamazoo the city that you were like, this story, this girl who eats Kalamazoo? Why was Kalamazoo the place where you felt like you had to set that story?
Why did I have to destroy Kalamazoo? No.
Yeah.
Funny you say that because yeah, I lived in Grand Rapids for 9 years, 9 to 18, very formative years. But I was born in Saginaw, lived there till I was 9. Then I lived in Kalamazoo from about 18 to about 30. So I originally titled that book "The Boy Who Ate Saginaw," and and then I started it, and I was like, a couple things are wrong with this. I don't really remember Saginaw that well, and I thought it'd be more interesting to write from a female point of view. And so I was like, all right, I think there's going to be more interesting conflicts here if it's a girl. So, and Kalamazoo was something that is more, near and dear to my heart because I spent more time there. I knew the town. Plus, I had, admittedly, some, kind of odd mixed feelings about not to do with the city itself, but just my own personal experiences there. And so I think it brought more grit and more of a conflict there. But in that novel, actually, her family is from Grand Rapids, so there is Grand Rapids in that novel. So I definitely mind my experiences in Grand Rapids as well.
So I had a different question I was going to ask you next. I was going to ask you about two characters in this book, but now I want to ask you something totally different because of what you just said. Do you think that Midwest writers have a different style of writing or have different themes in their stories that they tend to focus on versus like East Coast writers or West Coast writers? You're a Midwest writer. Like, is there anything unique about the people that come out of the Midwest in the way they write or the stories they tell?
I certainly like to believe that is true, and I don't have any scientific data to back that up. But my perception.
That's a very West Michigan answer. I believe it's true. I have no data, no science to prove this.
Right. Right. No, I know a lot. Obviously, I know a lot of writers from Chicago and in Michigan, and you know, it would be interesting. I do think that people should start looking at it as a region, like they look at Southern literature and they look at East Coast literature. Um, I think you would find a pattern in kind of the working class ethic. Obviously, the conflicts that arise are going to be different than ones in the South and out east and out on the West Coast and so on. But all I can do is pay attention to the world that I want to write about. And but for my own stories, absolutely, there's always I tend to write just I keep going back to the working class idea, I guess, because my mother's brothers and sisters, most of them worked at GM, and they were my parents were the only ones in their family, first ones in their family, and largely the only ones to go to college, and so I kind of just that's sort of the environment I grew up in, and I feel like that's a kind of work ethic that was bred into me. I've been, working dumb jobs since I was, not that my job now is dumb, but I started working as a paperboy when I was 9 years old, and I had jobs since that time. So yeah, I don't know. So a lot of these menial jobs that I had from age 9 to age 30 were pretty influential on, and they still are influential on me.
Well, thank you. Those were my three Darrin questions that are just for you. And now I kind of want to end with three kind of ridiculous, really important writing questions that all writers should contemplate on. First one that I have is, if there was a zombie apocalypse and you could put at any point in history, any three writers on your zombie apocalypse team to survive with you, which three are you picking?
Who would help me fight in the zombie apocalypse?
You've already mentioned Jack London. That would actually probably be one of mine. Jack London would know how to survive in any kind of environment.
That's probably true. I think an obvious answer would be Hemingway, because he's seen as this tough guy, but no, I don't want Hemingway. I think I would want Shirley. I would want people who can entertain me. I think you'd have to spend a lot of time inside hiding, right? So definitely Shirley Jackson would be there. She's kind of an agoraphobic, so she hates going out anyway. So then it'd have to be funny. Somebody funny. Donald Bartholomew always makes me laugh. His writing. I don't know him personally, but if he's as funny as his writing, can these be? Yeah, these are alive or dead. Yeah. And along those same lines, Mark Twain, right? I mean, he would be. Yeah, I'd want somebody, like when I'm reading, I can deal with like the depressing stuff. But if I was actually gonna hang out with them, I think Twain would be awesome.
First, who are we going with, Twain or Donald?
I'm going both. I'm Mark Twain, Donald Bartholomew, and Shirley Jackson.
Those are your three. That's a good team.
Thank you. I think so.
Make you through, I think.
And yeah, I think Mark Twain probably could kick some butt too.
You can get to the Mississippi, Mark Twain will know all the hideouts. He'll know how to survive.
That's right. River travel. Zombies can't swim, so.
Can't swim. Great with Twain.
Exactly.
I never even. What a genius answer.
I don't know about that, but I tried.
Second question is, have you ever put anyone into your writing that is a person you know. Have you ever like gotten revenge on someone by putting them in your writing?
You know,
And then you're like, well, you know, this is being recorded. I'm not sure.
it's funny, right, right.
Yeah.
I've absolutely put people in, but they're so kind of. I'm not one of these writers who takes somebody whole cloth, and I like to invent stuff about people, So, yeah, definitely, people I've known are in there, but they're combined with other people, and so they don't. As far as I know, nobody's ever come up to me and been like, "Hey, you know, you made me into a big dork in this." Oh, I don't know, but so yeah, the answer is yes, but it would have to be, you know, it kind of like with bringing my own personal stuff in. It's so interlaced with stuff, just bullshit I made up that I sometimes have a hard time remembering what's true.
So I just want to ask you about your book, The Big Baby Crime Spree and Other Delusions, which is coming out, I believe, March or May?
Tomorrow, like tomorrow, yeah. March 1st. Well, yeah, I don't know if tomorrow, whenever this interview airs, but it's coming out March 1st. So,
So this
yeah.
is a series of short stories. What inspired this book?
I actually got solicited by Wolfson Press. They have this American Storytellers series, and they told me, sent me a couple copies of their other books they had published, and I liked the idea that it's like a short collection. It's like 100 pages, and basically they said you have stories that would make up 100 pages, and be kind of unified as far as theme goes. And so I had some stories that had not been. I think only one of them had been published in a journal. No, two of them, I think. The other ones had, for one reason or another, just kind of been around, and I still liked them. So I was like, maybe these will work together. And I think they're all just, I was surprised that they're unified by this theme of people who are sort of unhappy but don't know why, are looking for something, they don't know what, and sort of place their energies into these unhealthy obsessions and delusions. And so, for whatever reason, I was writing that kind of stuff at some point.
Yeah, do you know people like that? Are there kind of people or characters that are based on people? I wondered in Kaleidoscope, I mean,
Yeah,
Jerry being the writer, and I relate so much to Jerry. And I was like, just because I've talked to you already, I'm like, I
yeah,
wonder how many pieces of you are in Jerry or other characters here.
yeah.
Like, are there pieces of the real people that you know that you put in here?
There always are in my work. I tend to try to, fictionalize as much as I can, but usually throw in elements of people I know. The Kaleidoscope story is definitely the most autobiographical story I've ever written, and that one really does have a lot of, I amplified things and added some things, but really it was based on me and my wife coming back to the United States after teaching in Japan for a year, and just feeling this immense culture shock coming back to the United States, which I didn't expect, and just feeling kind of like the world was really aggressive, and, and not knowing how to, where to go from here, sort of. So that one definitely. Other ones, I base things on, like you said, people I know, or parts of myself, but they're so mixed together that it's kind of indistinguishable.
Do you think that you'd ever revisit any of these characters? Because I know, like at the end of Baby Doll, like the second that ended, I was like, well, what? Wait, what's gonna happen? Like, are there? Like,
Yeah,
where is Mary and Merritt's marriage going? Like,
right, right.
I really kind of wanted there to be more there, and I was wondering, like, do you think like these little short stories are there anything that you would ever want to revisit and like take them into a novel or throw them into a longer piece?
I wouldn't be against it. I would have to wait for the right inspiration and have to, get that momentum back. I know what you mean. I do feel like I try to write stories that they that the story in its whole could continue, but there's something about the way it starts and ends that represents a completion of whatever moment was focused on. Yeah, that like the character in The Art of the Dead, that one has one of the most strange voices. You know, it's his syntax, his worldview, his he's really, you know, he's a drug addict and a stalker and you know, a child of a wealthy family that has rejected him, and he's he's very bent, you know, and so that one I could see. Definitely, I had a lot of fun with that voice. I could see revisiting that character and setting too. That one was very much a Cincinnati story, and I really enjoyed setting it there.
And the last story in here, it's actually where the title comes from, the Big Baby Crime Spree. That one was also written very differently in that, like, it had a lot more like chapter titles in it, and like even like the way things were put into bold, or they
Yeah.
were like capitalized and stuff. It was very artful the way it was written. Like you could see it almost as it was kind of like coming about as a story. What made you kind of choose to take a different format with that one?
I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, that was definitely it was a great example of being inspired by my classmates when I was in the graduate program at Cincinnati. There was a young woman in my class, and she, you know, I just took the idea. She had these heading titles, you know, of different sections of the story, and I was like, that's cool, you know, I want to try that. So I, you know, borrowed that idea, and everybody, I think writers need to borrow. You know, what's the famous line? I think it's T.S. Eliot says, "Good writers borrow, great writers steal." You know, so you know, we all are being inspired by each other, and I also, you know, her story was very playful and funny, and used those titles as ways, as sort of like placeholders. I really just liked the way it divided up the story and brought your attention to each moment a little bit differently. And I probably ran with it a little more and did those, like you said, those bold moments. There's these moments where the father, who is very ill, is just like moaning in the background and making all this noise, and it's getting louder and louder. And I just was, yeah, I figured once I started playing with format with those heading titles, then anything was fair game as far as messing with the way it looked on the page.
So it's coming out. What do you hope people take away from it? Like, what's your big kind of, you know, what's your big message that you want to come out of this book?
You know, the most I want is people to just be entertained. You know, truthfully, at the end of the day, any kind of story should be entertaining, you know, and just make you want to keep turning the pages. So, you know, hopefully people will laugh. Hopefully people will be a little freaked out. Hopefully people will be a little disturbed.
I was
Oh, good.
in a good way.
Thanks. Yeah, I think, pardon me. I do feel like art is, you know, should push people and push the audience a bit, and challenge, you know, challenge us in some way, you know, make us feel uncomfortable in some moments, not to such an extreme that we don't like it, but in a way that just kind of challenges us. And so yeah, I don't know that there's anything I want people to take away from. I think, however, whatever people bring to the stories will impact how they read it. But like I said, I just hope people are entertained, and I hope they are invested in the characters, even if they don't like them. I hope they're invested in them, or they're just so peculiar that they want to understand what makes them tick. And that's so much of why I read, and so much of what I love is characters who I don't really understand, and I read it and I go like, man, that's such a different point of view than I'm used to. I love it. I love being immersed in that kind of thing. So that's what I was trying to do with a lot of these.
Darrin, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for doing this. Your book of short stories, The Big Baby Crime Spree and Other Delusions, is coming out in March. Where can people find you if they want to learn more? Do you have a website? Yeah.
Yeah. DarrinDoyle.com. I'm on Twitter as well. And yeah, those are the best places. And take a look at the book. I hope you like it.
All right. Thank you so much, Darrin. It's an absolute pleasure talking to you. Fire up chips. Hope you guys stay safe and stay warm up there in Mount Pleasant. And check out purplewallstories.com, everyone. Thank you so much.